All right, so folks are trickling in, and thrilled to have Matt Hillary from Drata join us today for our third session of GrailCast Live. For those that joined in the first couple, this will be pretty conversational. Matt does have a lot of nuggets to share. I have personally reviewed the material and just shared with him I am impressed. But I think just, first meeting with Matt, all the way to today, I just think he has a very unique perspective coming from Drata and his experience prior as well. So we're just very excited to get him on the show and looking forward to the conversation. So I won't belabor the point. Maybe Matt, do you want to just do a little intro and then I'll do the same and we'll kick it forward.
Of course, Daniel. Yeah, just harkening back to when we first met, I think it was here in Salt Lake City where you joined one of our local SL CISO dinners, and just found you to be just incredibly genuine human being that really cared about the person first, and then everything else that we do separately second. Also, your love for cars was something that stood out. Was kind of fun as well.
We
So
share that for sure. Yeah.
totally love that. No, yeah, but thank you for the intro. I am Drata's Chief Information Security Officer. I'm more than anything a fellow practitioner to all those who are attending, and to yourself as well. And here at Drata, my team, we represent Customer Zero, where we really truly use our own products and platform internally. And so, I lead our internal IT, our security, our GRC teams, as well as our enterprise applications teams, which are just incredible professionals to work with. But it just ends up being a really fun job as a CISO at a security company, not only have what a typical CISO might manage, but also the other fun go-to-market CISO related activities. And more than anything, just love conversations like this with you to just share knowledge with our fellow practitioners in the space. Truly hope that whatever I share today is helpful to those who are attending. But Daniel, really appreciate, again, the vibrance, the care, the love that you have towards the privacy space and building the platform you have there. Just been fascinating, that similar kind of drive towards automation that you have there to help us all with all that space, largely, again, rooted in building the trust of our customers and, make
Totally.
sure we're doing things right there. So, but again, every interaction has been delightful. Looking forward to the conversation today with you.
Cool, cool. Well, yeah, Daniel Barber, co-founder, CEO of DataGrail. So just the one line on DataGrail. DataGrail is a complete AI-powered data privacy platform for global brands like Databricks, FanDuel, and Restoration Hardware. So I think, getting right into it, Matt, I think the thing that sort of separates you from many other CISOs and security leaders, I feel like you've seen all areas of the journey, right? Starting from zero, joining mid stage. And so I just, I think kicking us off, I'd love to kind of understand like how you think about like a compliance program from scratch, and then how do you think about approaches that have helped you, distill those complex control requirements, which we're all trying to stay on top of, as well as like, what guidance you have in terms of working with your, counterparts in engineering and the business teams to help them, get to the right outcome.
I like this question, and you're right. Like, it's been incredible to be a part of so many different organizations and joining them at various parts of the journey. I kind of see joining a company as, as a security practitioner and as a GRC practitioner, as you've got this sometimes blank canvas if it's a company that's just barely starting their journey. And sometimes you're joining a company that they've already had a prior leader who's done incredible work to get them where they're at, and you're there to kind of help continue to paint on that canvas. But the reality is the paints are the same, I think, in some of those principles, but the way we utilize those, it just varies by company. So, in preparation for this conversation, I came up with six, principles that hopefully those listening might be able to benefit from. The first one comes to mind is just you got to start understanding what the business needs are. No company is the same. It's amazing to walk in and understand what their business model is, their key risks, what their customer expectations. This is one of the things that kind of harkens back to my Amazonian roots, where it was start with the customer and work backwards. And so, as a GRC or security or privacy professional, your customers are an ecosystem of your employees, your fellow team members, is one part of it. Your external customers, whether it be B2B SaaS or B2C SaaS, and understanding what their expectations are for trust, and obviously the investors and your leadership team and board members, to make sure, again, you're really understanding what those needs are first before even getting started.
Right.
Sometimes folks will walk in with a checklist and say, we got to do this, but in reality, it's like, no, like, you have that experience, you have the knowledge, you have those amazing things to bring to the table, but the true art of our roles is to tailor that to the companies that we join. And it's actually kind of the part that I love the most. So that's number one, is just understanding the business. The second is you got to know your stuff. You really got to be able to explain the why behind these things. You really got to do your homework. You got to study and understand, hey, what are these expectations around GRC? Like there's a new framework that came out, actually going and getting that framework and reading it from end to end, understanding the controls, but not just understanding the controls, but understanding why that is even a control in the first place. I
Mm,
mean, these aren't things that just were made up in thin air. They were made up as a result of mitigating risks that existed. Some what could go wrongs that, are there, pre-existing. So knowing again the risks behind them, the framework nuances is another part. And, ultimately some of us are going after being able to demonstrate our compliance with these controls and frameworks via having an external assessor. And so sometimes it's important to take some time to understand what your assessor's
looking
expectations
at
are.
too. Yeah.
And so it's just good kind of know what that goalpost is, while you get started. But you really can't simplify things that you don't truly understand. And so one of my favorite parts, and we'll talk about this a little more later, is when somebody asks why. It's like, and we really fail as practitioners when our immediate answer is because we need to comply, or because that's security best practice or privacy best practice. And it misses the mark in being able to sit down with another human and truly help them understand, or just meet them where they're at, where they're like, hey, why? And I'm like, I love they're asking why. And then being able to sit down and say, well, here are the risks associated with it. Here's maybe why it's part of this framework. And then the true art then is working together with that person to craft a control that may be different than the control in the
Mm,
framework slightly, but that really again meets what the company is looking for. So again, that second one is just really knowing your stuff and being able to explain those things. The third, I kind of talked about this earlier, is just kind of tailor all this experience and knowledge to that company. No two organizations are the same. And that's the fun part, is being able to take this stuff and apply it to that company. I was thinking about the fourth item here, which is like starting with the human, and working backwards, both internally, but also finding a good external partner or assessor to work with that really knows what to look for,
yeah.
what good looks like potentially.
Yeah.
And when you understand that with them, it's like, cool. Like I have someone who really cares about our organization's journey. I've met with so many great external assessors who are incredible assessors, first of all. But second, they approach it with really caring about helping us progress. Their findings aren't just a gotcha type of thing. It's very much a no, 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 we're all trying to improve and grow here. And with that mentality, it's really awesome. Number five here is just adopting a GRC and trust management platform. This is where I think Drata and SafeBase really come to light and have helped so many on this journey, whether they're getting started, and just that springboard towards helping them on a journey is awesome.
Yeah.
Those that are very far in their journey, like enterprise level customers, where they have some complex frameworks or requirements, or even the hairiest of problems that are out there. It's We meet them where they're at and tailor it to meeting their needs. Again, the caution that I would give everyone is, these platforms come with out of the box controls and policies and stuff like that. What I would say is don't forget to take the time to tailor the controls to what your company is looking for, what your ultimate goals are. Otherwise, you end up with a ton of controls that may not necessarily be relevant with your company. And so it
Right.
really is us to say, hey, don't just wholesale adopt this stuff. We really got to move forward. But last but not least, and this is actually the most exciting part of, I think, this industry, is where automation has truly helped us move forward. This is where the whole GRC engineering effort is starting to come to light. But
Right.
the use of AI has just thrown gasoline on this fire of automation. We're able to replace a lot of these manual workflows in the past to really having our programs on automation and backed by AI, in the sense that we can really focus our higher order level thinking on things that just really matter. So those are my six kind of
Yeah.
immediate thoughts on
I
how it's
like
going
that
to
you
help
got
scale.
principles. I feel like that's helpful for folks because, then to your point, you can apply them no matter what stage and what scale the company's at. Um, yeah, on point two. So I just, kind of carrying on that automation track. I'm sure as you've gone through different programs, you've thought about, what manual work can you automate? And there's probably been tools along the way that have helped you scale both GRC and, trust organizations, and probably what you see in the market too, which is an area I'm curious about. What tools or processes have you adopted as you've thought through that,
I
or
like
have you
the
seen?
Yeah, yeah, no, no. Oh, there's our poor GRC friends, me included, we've been bereft of tools over the last number of years that could enable
Yeah.
us like our security counterparts. And so that's why I'm impressed you like DataGrail, you all building a tool to help us with the privacy stuff and then our own organization building stuff from the compliance and GRC side. And I'm liking that your question included both process and technology because many of us
Mm,
start by just saying, cool, let's integrate this, but they neglect to take a moment to really understand the process
right.
policies.
What is
Like
the
we
process we're doing today before we actually go and automate something?
Totally. Like if a
Yeah.
process is already painful and full of stuff that's not going to matter or makes it just in general not going to meet the mark, that automation just scales that pain. And it's so
Yeah.
you really got to start understanding that process, drawing it on the board or some of the best ways to really understand, hey, this is how we're doing it today. Sometimes a good swim lane diagram really helps you understand, like, okay, that actually doesn't help us here, or hey, what tool are we using for that? And so that's number one is just understanding the process. And then once at that point, controls are just control points within that whole process. So once you understand the
Mm,
process, you can jump in and say, hey, this control says we need approval before giving that access. So when we start talking about tools or platforms like Drata, we really handle the blocking and tackling, but GRC teams really need to tune those controls and those control points to really what the organization needs to do. Um, we got to treat that automation aspect of it like a roadmap. I kind of think of them as dominoes falling forward when it comes down to, let's say we've got, 60, 70, 80, sometimes hundreds of controls. Out of the box, we automate a number of those with our platform, but there's a number that are still not there and
mm,
that are not tailored to our very specific needs and organization, some of the technologies that we're using. And so you start including that GRC engineering element as part of our roadmaps to close that gap. And so again, that's all baked on first understanding the processes. To your question around tools and tech stack, there's some foundational things that I think everyone should include in their, GRC programs. One is, a GRC automation platform, a trust center that's capable of, helping with auto approvals for customers that are there to really make it self-service for them to get the artifacts they're looking for. Those are more on the GRC side, but this is where sometimes IT may be included in the scope of a CISO, which I think has just been
mm,
incredible pairing value because, you have these really core security and GRC controls founded in a good identity provider that's providing
right.
strong authentication and
Right.
authorization, and a good MDM provider to say, hey, like, was that laptop encrypted like when it was stolen? Or like, you
Right.
don't need to ask the
You
question because
need
it's already
those. Right.
done. Totally. Or like a really capable CSPM or cloud security posture management tool to really help make sure we're securing that layer among others. So there's some foundational things, but some key automations that have really helped me and my own team have been around like using AI assisted questionnaire answering capabilities to
Mm,
really turn those around within minutes versus, oh man, sometimes over an hour, depending on the number of questions. Again, the purpose behind questionnaires, I think, is really to meet our customers where they're at. They're the ones asking the questions. My hope is
mm,
that behind the questionnaires, they have intentionality around what they're trying to do there. Having a living risk register that's fueled by some of these automated capabilities to enhance our risk statements, our assessments of those. There's a lot of workflows and tasks we get to build. And last but not least, agents are starting to become a reality for us in our day to day.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's no different in our GRC space, building things like a third party risk agent, your compliance agent, a trust agent, any of those areas that we can truly offload to a capable agent to do what an incredible GRC human would do. But now they have these agents helping them do that even better
Yeah.
than before. So
And it's
there's some areas.
probably evidence-based there too, which is a little bit more interesting than sort of like just collecting documentation for the purpose of documentation, which agents have the capability to do.
Totally. And it's been more accessible to all of us now
Right.
with, just amazing platforms to build on.
Right, right. So, kind of to Dwight's point in the chat, I think the why is particularly interesting, and does build relationships a little stronger, right? When people understand the background of why you're trying to do something. Maybe just spending a little bit more on that. I'd be curious how you've kind of combined the relationship importance, but also like how it relates to controls. And if you have an example, would love to hear it.
Yeah, I think this is where a differentiator when it comes to looking or you're being a really good GRC practitioner comes to light where um it's building that relationship with the human first. I see connections and relationships with other people. It could be a direct competitor, it could be someone that I haven't had an enjoyable time with in the past, but I see those relationships and connections with other people at a much higher plane than everything else
Mm,
that we work on. And once you
mm,
establish that first and you really have your intent clear and that other person knows that your intent is pure, I think that trust is established to a point where it's like, cool, like we are ready to go and conquer the world together. And so starting with, when you come into an organization on the outset, or, let's say you've had a painful interaction with another team member internally and go and repair that relationship with that person.
Mm,
Those are the things that really end up paying out dividends for both parties or all parties involved to say, hey, like security, GRC, privacy, we are all a safe place to work together.
right.
I see a failure in leadership when you walk in sometimes and you end up giving off that smartest person in the room vibe and everyone's not excited to work with you. And as a result, you end up losing a lot of influence. I've learned that the hard way a long time ago, earlier in my career, where someone pulled me aside and said, Matt, no, when you show up in a room this way, like it gives this vibe and nobody wants to,
Mm,
and if you can't influence as a security GRC or privacy practitioner,
you're
like
gonna struggle there.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna fail. So that was an example. But anyway, establishing those relationships, and this is with peers, it doesn't matter. Like I hate the hierarchical nature within organizations that cause even the largest organizations to see title and organizational structure as a factor in any connection with other people.
Hmm.
And I think it really inhibits our ability to do what we ultimately want to do together. So that's another way to kind of say is like, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you fit in the
Yeah.
organization, you have that connection. But to the why, so an example is, I'll get asked why all the time. We had something come across the board where it was talking about signing commits in GitHub, and
Mm,
it was like, wait, infrastructure team member was like, wait, why don't you just sign commits? This is really frustrating. We didn't do this prior. We're doing it now, but then you're part of the organization has been doing it, and so. Instead of saying this is security best practice or otherwise, like we literally took a moment and said, hey, I love that you're asking why. In fact, I think our SRE and infrastructure team members are the ones that usually ask the most technical whys that
that's
really
awesome.
push the limits for any GRC or security practitioner to help there because they really are the people who just know the tech and love it and want to say, hey, like I'm happy to help here, but take a moment and help me why because you really the ultimate goal there is again building trust and that connection with them so they can say hey I have a partner here not someone that's like dictating and throwing the book at you saying just
I mean,
because.
a responsive security best practice is going to land as you would expect it is, right? Like that's just not like no one's going to respond well to that.
Totally. I don't
Uh,
like it. And my
yeah.
kiddos, even like when they're 5 years old, are like, why? Because I remember my oldest, I think it was like 5 years old. No, it was like 3 or 4. He'd be like, well, why? Or like, because. Well, why? Because. He's like, why? Because it just kept iterating it a number of times. And it was just, I love his mentality because my mind is similarly wired.
I mean,
And
that's I think how we're all wired ultimately, right? We've got a 3-year-old, it's the same thing. Although I will say, 5 or 6 questions deep, I have to actually just respond with, well, that's the answer. We can't, there's actually nowhere to go now. But that's 5 or 6 deep, which I think is the point you're trying to make of, creating empathy there helps.
yeah, I know, absolutely. And in that particular example, we actually sat down and we actually proved why signing commits was important. We pushed the
Mm.
commit to a repo that showed that we signed it using that person's identity, and they were like, "Whoa,
Mm.
whoa, 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 wait! You can push commits as me." And as a result, it ended up, or it wasn't signed, but we basically just changed the attribution to them because signing wasn't
Mm.
enabled on that particular thing. Just again show sometimes we have to go to those links to help explain stuff, and I see it as time well spent, especially at the end of the day when they realize we have a security GRC, a privacy team that cares, taking the moment to work through those. So it helps democratize our thoughts around like these
Right.
principles and control, and it helps lay the foundation of democratizing control ownership and risk ownership, and really just takes that kind of checkboxy thought to that shared outcome there. So yeah, that's kind of my experience on that front.
Yeah, no, that was great. So, we talked about in your principles, your last point there on just AI and AI use. I think that we're all going through this sort of discussion of AI risk, but then there's also opportunities, of course, and this is particularly prevalent in security and GRC teams. How do you think about like GRCs transforming their program, but also recognizing the risks that are related to AI? And how do you think about, or have you seen teams, particularly, given you see so many security organizations kind of use AI to unlock new markets or shorten sales cycles or just, take the program to the next level?
And I love this. Is such a broad question. I hope I'm able to kind of answer the different facets
Yeah,
because it's
there's a
it's
lot
really
there. Yeah.
it's good. It's good. Um, I think we're facing a future where UI is going to be replaced with speech to text conversations with agents that we built.
Yeah.
With that in mind, it's changing how we go about, how we approach these next steps, especially in this next year. It's going to be, hey, I'm going to use a capable speech to text capability to then say, these are the things that I want to do with these agents and move forward. The foundation that I would probably share with everyone here is we've relied so much on just really good, capable, skilled professionals and humans to come to the table knowing how to do these things, right? And
Mm,
many times we don't take a moment to actually write out what those expectations are of what we want to do. We need those things kind of written out into expectations so that we can then
particularly for
craft them
AI.
in totally
Yeah.
to write them into instructions so that we can like create these micro agents to start taking
Mm,
elements off of our plate. So again, we can focus and accelerate in other areas that our human minds are just so craving to do. So, a couple examples there. I'm seeing a lot of organizations adapt, AI assisted questionnaire assistance as almost an immediate, not only a deal cycle time accelerator, but also, building trust with our sales team members who are like, oh my gosh, we have this, deal we need to close, tomorrow, but they came across with the questionnaire last minute and you're like, cool, but now we can get it done within 5, 10, 15 minutes, which is awesome. And with that, we get faster response time. So deal cycle trust is built with people internally and externally, but also our time is able to spend already on an extremely lean team to do that. It's just helped impacted our revenue kind of targets and timeline there. But another area is like you mentioned, new markets. Um, with the advent of just so many new frameworks that have come out, we're still required to constantly and continuously learn these new frameworks and new markets and what
mm,
their expectations are, or like what their language is in a specific kind of industry where it's like, hey, we speak HIPAA and you all speak, FedRAMP or whatever it may be.
yeah. Yeah.
For many of us, we got to learn some of these things and really do what I
Mm,
said earlier, which is like, you got to know your stuff, which means you got to do your homework, which, now we have some capable tools to help us learn faster than we were ever able to before. And so that's helped our teams kind of get up to speed on like, for example, ISO 42001 last year, understanding what we need to do to achieve that and demonstrate that. So that's one. The second, and this is really exciting too, is just that unlock of GRC engineering. Traditionally, sometimes GRC practitioners aren't, developers. They're folks that haven't yet had a chance to actually write scripts or code or whatever it may be. But now with, capable large language model or provider that we have today, we can go in and actually create these things.
right.
Sometimes 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when we can't sleep and our
Right.
brains are like, what are we doing? Like, hey, I hate this thing that we're working on. How can I actually use AI to build this? And it's fascinating what I'm seeing across the board, CISOs all the way down to like, senior GRC team members that are like, hey, I just want to be able to do this. How can I do this? And just, it's accelerated all of us to be able to contribute in a technological way when that barrier to entry prior has just been potentially
Too
too
high.
high.
Yeah.
So, and last but not least, we got to think in the world of like using MCPs and micro agents in the future. And so thinking about that is going to really help us accelerate all of our efforts. Again, kind of talking about encoding what a GRC practitioner would do into instructions that we can then now use and build with these agents. But at the end of the day, like, what an exciting time to be here in this space and be able to build what we're able to build, and it's going to help us scale to the next level across the board. So, specific to the AI, those are some things at the end there that I thought would be helpful for all of us to look forward to.
Yeah, I love that you put in there MCP. I think this is there's just so much opportunity there, like almost limitless opportunity, right? I think traditionally you've had systems where APIs were, really a developer only kind of operation, right? That's where engineers would have to get involved, and there were some middleware tools to kind of make that possible. But DataGrail, for example, we released our MCP this week. We're actually the first privacy platform to do it. Very difficult to do from a security standpoint, but it unlocks just like limitless possibilities of things that you can do with now tools that also have MCP. So I just, I think to your point of lowering the barrier to entry for folks to be able to do tasks that were, you know, previously required engineering work or development work between applications, those barriers are now dropped entirely.
Yeah.
So just it is very exciting there, and I think like the agentic workflows that come with that, based on what model you're using, gets even more exciting of like stringing together different workflows. And I think your point there on initial point of like documenting is really smart. The points that people are actually doing today, like what does the process look like today? Because that's what has to be fed into an agent, right? So if
Mm.
teams don't understand the processes they have today, they obviously then inherently can't build agentic workflows to replace those, or at least they won't be effective. So yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just saw in the chat, Marina, I just really appreciate you bringing it up. You're right. There's a really important element that we just cannot neglect. Humans are always going to continue to be as part of this whole process.
Right.
And that loop, it just has to be, and we just have to be in the loop in a lot of these cases, and especially high stakes decisions or other
Right.
stuff. But that's a really, really good call out to make sure we reiterate there too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the judgment component becomes even more important, right? Of trying to figure out where is human judgment required, right? At
Mm.
what levels of decisions and what things require that judgment. That's sort of the work environment that we're likely entering, where there will be different levels based on, how automated something is or what the potential is based on risk as well. So
Totally. I think I heard recently, I hope I attribute it correctly to Sam Altman, but it was like, hey, AI is not going to be replacing humans, but humans who use AI are going to replace humans who don't. It's just a good reminder that we all need to really continue to adopt these in our day-to-day workflows. And
yeah.
it's actually been pretty fun too.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, look, really enjoyed the conversation, Matt, and hopefully folks in the audience have as well. Always good to see you and appreciate the support and coming and joining. As I mentioned, we'll run another session actually in 2 weeks. So we will have Vanessa, who is the general counsel of Cedar, coming and join us on the 19th. It looks like we have a question from Vera. You're welcome to throw it in the chat if you like, and we'll try to answer it in the last minute here if we catch it. Otherwise, I'll see everyone in a couple of weeks with the next session. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Daniel.
You bet. See you, Matt. Bye.